Welcome, good evening, and welcome again to the last discussion of the day for MySTL. We're celebrating today the launch of MySTL, a brand new and very exciting platform for sharing stories of downtown, sharing stories of people, of businesses, of all kinds of great things that happen here and that make downtown a wonderful place to live, work, and play. And earlier in the day, we had first session in the morning where we talked about the history of downtown. The afternoon session, around the lunch hour, we talked about the present of downtown. And this session, the final session of the day, we're going to be talking about the future of downtown. Before we get started, I wanted to thank our sponsors, Purano Pasta, for hosting us, for having great food here. If you haven't checked it out before, please do so. They do have great food, and the atmosphere is really amazing. So another thing is, for all the people here in the audience and all the people watching live, please share on your social media properties our MySTL using the hashtag MySTL, and then you can also share it via Facebook by going through our page MySTL City. So this panel today, at this time, is arts, parks, and placemaking. How we are helping catalyze growth in downtown St. Louis and positioning it for the success for the future. We have two panelists, great panelists today. We have Emma Clues from Great Rivers Greenway. She's the Vice President of Communications and Outreach. And we have Felicia Shaw, Executive Director of Regional Arts Commission. And I'm moderating. I'm the CEO and Vice President of Downtown STL. So with that, the structure of the panel is I'll ask one question for both of the panelists, and then I'll have some questions individually that will be added and responded by others as well. So the first, I wanted to open with this, since this is about placemaking in arts and parks. There's almost a consensus in academic research, in practitioner, that arts and having more green spaces, more parks, and better placemaking in general sort of helps a community, a neighborhood, a city, and a region to grow and really prosper. And as we were discussing throughout the day today, how downtown has experienced change, good and bad, but in the last 15 years, we really have had tremendous progress. In your view, as you look today, all that change, the new buildings that have come online, new parks, new art and cultures, how does that position us for the future success of downtown St. Louis?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. Well, we know who our competition is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what people want to experience when they visit a city. They want vibrancy, they want activity, they want to feel a sense of belonging, and more than anything, they want it to be memorable. Mm-hmm. And that's what the arts does in any community. It gives you a sense of liveliness, you have a sense of character and place. You go home and you tell your friends about, hey, I just came from St. Louis and I saw, I heard, I tasted, I felt. It's all about this sensory experience. We have that here in St. Louis, but we need to lift up what's already working. Think of it. Our most iconic work of art is the St. Louis Arch. Yet we almost look at it as like it's a trinket or something. We are branded as an art community. We need to have more of that, not just in those special places, but on every corner, so it kind of spills out onto the streets. One of the things I like about Nashville, and you'll hear me talk about other cities that do it well, is you know what it's about, and what they do well spills out onto the streets. You hear the music, you smell the food. Mm-hmm. What is St. Louis? Are we beer and baseball and barbecue? Well, let's lift that up, brand that, and use our public spaces to tell that story more.
Perfect.
I completely echo what Felicia said. It's a great answer. I'll also just add that really parks and open spaces serve as those in-between spaces that are not necessarily in a building or, but just exactly what she was saying, where places where people can be and feel a sense of what St. Louis has to offer. I think the most successful art or green space actually is that is unique and specifically relevant to that place. So the more we can be doing things that are really helping people leave with a sense of St. Louis rather than just a sense of being outside or a sense of art in general, the better. And I also think that there's something to be said for getting residents of the region to come visit the area.
Oh,
this is the front door of our region and our state. And so regardless of, or in addition to tourism, also giving people, with vibrant spaces and artwork and things to come experience, that's a reason for people to come back again and again, not just when they're bringing an out-of-town visitor.
Right. And actually, so picking up on that point, arts in general and artist community, they play a very, very important role in establishing sort of the visual and the structural identity of any place. And,
Absolutely.
city after city has that experience. And if you look at downtown St. Louis, from some of the most amazing architecture you will see anywhere in the world to some of the very good, thoughtful outdoor and indoor pieces of art are right here within maybe a square mile of downtown St. Louis. So from that perspective, downtown has a very rich history and presence of art and community of artists. But most people wouldn't know it.
They don't notice it.
And that's the thing, it's like,
Right.
okay, well, how can we help engage, in your view, the community of the broader region, have them discover, or rather rediscover, I don't know, the treasures that we have in downtown St. Louis, and really take ownership of it, and
Right.
really explore.
I wish I knew what it is that keeps people from noticing.
Uh-huh.
How do you notice something that's been in your presence for so long? And I think it begins with education. First of all, a lot of people, when they think about public art, they usually think about some guy on a bronze horse holding a sword and pointing to the sky. They think of monuments. But really, it's murals, it's lighting that's integrated into the streetscape. It's the way the buildings interact with the sidewalk. It's all around us. But that's probably the reason people don't notice, is because when artists do their work really well, you aren't supposed to necessarily see it all the time. It might be embedded in the concrete, something really interesting that you walk on.
Yeah.
There's a new piece that's being installed at the St. Louis Museum of Art by Richard Serra that is actually intended for you to drive over. So it's not meant to stand up for you to look at and don't touch it. It's meant to be interactive. So I think we need to have a better vocabulary about what the arts are and what it isn't. It's design, right? It's the
right.
color of a building. It might be glass or
Right.
a stained glass. All of that together makes an environment where people want to be and where they want to stay.
Right, and I completely agree in terms of how people perceive. Like if you were to tell someone that a group or an organization is working on an arts-related project, the thought will be, oh, it's about a painting or a
it's gonna
sculpture
be a painting.
or something,
And it's going to be
that's-
here for 100 years.
Exactly.
When in fact, it may disintegrate in 10 days.
Right,
You know,
right. And they sort of it's almost as like a separate boxed experience. It's not that it is contributing and defining and building the overall built environment. And to that end, for example, you mentioned the interactivity piece of it. If things that are inside a museum now, everybody will be like, oh, that's an art piece. But a lot of other cities have had something similar to. As an example, there was a piece I think in Philadelphia where on the sidewalk, the piano keys were painted.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
you would be like, okay, this is not an art piece, but you walk
Right.
by and some musical notation
Right.
will play. And there are a lot
And
of things
it's very
like that that are being worked
One
here.
of the simplest pieces was in Seattle, and this is, I think, back in the 90s. And they put the footsteps of a dance. They were done in bronze and embedded into the concrete. And everybody wanted to dance whatever this was. It was like, put your foot here, put your foot here. And we found out later it really wasn't a real dance at all. But everybody tried it because it looked like, oh, I want to learn
a
this
thing.
dance. It was
Yeah.
a thing. So people, the spirit of playfulness. In another city, they put up a set of swings, believe it or not, on a city street. A set of swings. So people going to work, all of a sudden, hey, I want to release some tension. I'm gonna hop on a swing, you know, and do that for a while. I mean, is that what that's what we can call art? It's an interactive, playful, creative moment
Right.
that St. Louis, we can do that here.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that brings me to actually next question. You are working on a downtown arts plan that
We
I'm guessing
are,
that I
yes.
know includes and involves some of these components.
We are.
Would you be able to share details?
Yes, I'm so excited about this. So, thanks to Downtown STL as well as Explore St. Louis, we're partnering on a public art master plan. And what that basically means is instead of having artworks kind of scattered here and there will be a comprehensive strategic approach to including public art in our built environment. We want to look at all the places and spaces that would be made better if there were art there, made safer if there were art there, made more vibrant if there were art there. It's almost like in a neighborhood where you want people to be, I want you to walk more on this street, put something there, don't walk over here and put nothing there. So we want a plan that will guide our investment over the coming years. And one way that we're going to test out the plan when it gets finished next year is with a demonstration project. We've applied to the National Endowment for the Arts for a small project, about $500,000. Well, we will install a series of temporary and public artworks throughout the core of downtown just to see how it changes the rhythm, just to see how people get excited, to give people more of a vocabulary about how the arts can make downtown St. Louis a much more vibrant, more inviting place to be. I am so excited about this, and I hope that people will engage in our survey and come out for our, we're going to do a big charrette called Imagine Art Here. Imagine Art Here. So imagine art here. What would be changed about this particular corner if there were a mural? And we'll inform our plan with those suggestions from ordinary people who live and work downtown.
That sounds very exciting.
I'm excited.
How can people find out more or be engaged in this as we work?
I'm so glad you asked that question.
It-
Well, one way is to visit our website. The Downtown Public Art Master Plan is actually part of a larger cultural plan that we're doing for the entire region. And it's all branded under the name Evoke, E-V-O-K-E. So you go to our website, evoke.racstl.org, and you will find out information not only about the Public Art Master Plan, but also about the larger plan. And there's a survey they can take where they can weigh in about all this happening in the region, including the Public Art Master Plan.
Perfect.
Yes.
And for all the viewers, there will be a link to that on our website if you want to follow along there.
Thank you.
And no, it's very exciting, and
Yes.
we all are very, very excited that an effort like this is underway because, for one, you're thinking more comprehensively,
Yes.
and second, thinking outside the box. As we talked about before, art is not just sculpture and
It's
murals
not
and
that
painting.
guy.
It in a lot of ways, it can add or inject vibrancy, a little bit, a little quirk to the area, a little bit, things that could make it someone remember your experience of downtown a little bit better, a little more pleasantful. And to that, in terms of work that's being done regarding art and how it is being engaged in downtown, one of the most massive projects going on right now is Gateway Art, grounds redevelopment.
Which is a piece of art now. Don't
Yes,
forget that.
It is.
absolutely.
It is.
I'm with you on that one.
So $380 million, certainly a lot, to redevelop and completely transform a major section of downtown. And earlier in the day, we were talking about that in terms of how it will be changing how people perceive downtown, people who are from the region, people who are from outside the region, and more importantly, the green spaces that are surrounding it. How, in your view, that whole project, what do you think, as we look ahead 5 years or 10 years out, will have an impact on downtown, both from the perspective of people who live here, people who work here, or people who are visiting?
It's a great question. So there's lots of answers, obviously. A couple of the things that, obviously the main goals of the project, it's going to be a seamless experience from going from downtown the city to the arch to the river, hence the name of the project. It's also much more accessible now. So not only is you're not battling traffic in those streets, but not a single stair step either. So it's now fully ADA accessible, and people can get between all those different spaces to explore, everything that site has to offer. I think bringing some attention to, our history in terms of being a river city and connecting to our river. We aren't always, many other cities, the riverfront is the vibrant sort of hub of the downtown and of the region. And so inviting people in a much easier and more welcoming way, I think will be a great asset for the region. One of the most specific, tangible changes is really the demolition of the garage that was on the north end of the project. So if you guys can all remember, there was a 3-story garage at the north part of the project, immediately adjacent to Washington Avenue and the Eads Bridge. And while that offered, a very clear place for people to park, it was also a barrier from the sense of, if you're wandering around in the arch grounds and you want to get lunch, you have 3 stories of concrete and a street before you can navigate under the bridge and find Laclede's Landing and some of those places to eat. Or navigating 6 lanes of very heavy traffic over a highway to get into downtown to find a place to eat. So the other piece of that is the minute that garage went down, and there are so many places to park in downtown, you guys know this, but even on an average day, there's 2,600 spaces that aren't being used. So there are parking spaces everywhere. We did a pretty big study before, deciding to take a garage down. But with that new entrance being closer to the city, within a 5-minute walk, there's all of the different places that you can park to be able to get there. And without, that garage there, a lot of people could come to the arch, park there, walk, go to the museum, or go up into the arch and walk back and never step foot in the city of St. Louis. So they were coming to our downtown, and they were only ever going to the national park and not ever interacting with the city whatsoever. So by not having that as an option, it forced people to integrate into our incredible downtown. And the minute that went down, even in the middle of the winter, the pedestrian feel of the city changed. And people are suddenly parking all over and walking by shops and restaurants and art and parks and all these other things to get to and from the arch. So even though the level of service is still very high in terms of being able to park somewhere with good lighting and security and taking credit cards and all those good things, you are forced to integrate our national park, which is a huge asset. We have one of the only huge urban parks in the country that have a national park in a city. And so that, I think, is a very visceral, tangible change where it's just, just that simple fact of building that differently forces a totally different feel of downtown where you've got people everywhere and you're walking around and going to the arch. It's really exciting.
Right. I mean, I use the line all the time that how many cities or how many neighborhoods where you can say that you live right next to a national park, or you can go for your morning run to in a national park. In terms of that garage, so the demolition of that garage also had sort of hurt the ability of the Laclede's Landing merchants in the short term, and we're hopeful, as soon as the project is complete, there will be a lot better access for people to be able to go to the landing businesses. But long term looking, most of the cities, to your point, they really leverage the potential offered by the rivers that they're next to. Here, the river was cut off.
Yes.
I mean, you had the river, and then you had the arch grounds, but then you had these massive freeways, and then everybody on this side, you really have to be determined to go on that side, right?
Right.
Otherwise, it's like, okay, that's something only
Those
reserved
people
for
do.
visitors.
Right.
And having that connection, I think in the long term, you're right. I mean, it will be very, very helpful. Another thing, I wanted to get both of your thoughts as well on is there are plans to expand it further north, right? North Riverfront, or there are a lot of different trailway plans. I know GRG has been working on a plan like that for some time. Can you share how that fits within this vision and where it is now?
Sure. So we did a comprehensive plan for, meaning the North Riverfront, meaning Eads Bridge to the Stan Musial Bridge. So this is looking at an area that's still a very industrial working riverfront. We're along, one of North America's major rivers. It's going to flood. We are not going to pretend like we, can best Mother Nature, right? But how can you adapt and how can you embrace that space? So what we did was a comprehensive look at that area, more than just parks and open spaces and greenways, but also mixed use and residential and office space and innovation districts and what else can be there. So we will never obviously be able to do all of that because our role is to build the green space and the greenways. But working with SLDC and other partners, what could we do to envision that space? And so a couple of the sort of highlights to throw out would be, again, to work with the flooding, so to build floodplain parks that are built to flood that will look cool and different when it is flooded, another reason to go down there and check it out, but not building major development right at that very spot, right? So let's not invite damage, destruction, and danger into that working riverfront. But embracing that and allowing some features that are, again, meant to flood. Also, understanding what can be done with the water, so there's an opportunity to channelize a little bit, have a little kayaking park down there. You're not out on the mighty Mississippi, but you're still interacting with the water and letting people, again, sort of get into that space. So, we can't speak to exactly what will happen with the full, building and built environment part of that plan and reinvesting in that area, but from our perspective, we have small projects that we're already starting to be able to develop those parts that are going to be parks and open space and greenways, to really invite people down and, again, give quality of life to folks that may live near there.
Cool. So it is already sort of under implementation in some
Bits and
ways.
pieces, yep.
It is?
Yep.
Okay, very exciting. So to that, extending that further, you have the North Riverfront, and then recently GRG started working on the Shoto Greenway, and there was I think, public engagement period. Maybe it is still going on. Can you share a little bit more?
Yeah, so the Shoto Greenway will connect from Washington University and Forest Park to the Arch and the river. So this is the sort of the middle part of our city, and exploring also connections north and south along that route, understanding all the different places that people want to go, travel, and also hang out. So it being a destination in and of itself. The greenways that we've built to date, we have 113 miles around our region, and this one is really an opportunity to elevate the level of design in the sense of making this be like our, Atlanta Beltline or Indianapolis Cultural Trail or Highline in Brooklyn, things that these are vibrant destinations where people want to be. There's art, there's outdoor classrooms, there's musicians, there's all kinds of different amenities where, of course, it's also an opportunity to get from point A to point B, but also a really cool place to be and to spend your time. And it allows you to explore the region differently. So right now we're doing an international design competition, not unlike the City Arch River project.
Okay.
So folks from all over the world can submit their teams in the next month, and we're also doing community engagement out at meetings and events and pop-ups, but we also have a survey online. So at shotogreenway.org, we will have information where we want to hear from people right now, just general information about where do you want to connect, what would make you feel welcome, what would make it an inclusive experience, what would make you feel safe, what are the different stories that we should be highlighting along the way. And then we'll move into, as the designers start in January, we'll also have another engagement period where they will have 4 design teams that showcase their designs in April, and we'll want to hear from the community again once those are out.
Can I advocate for something as I'm listening to all your plans? There is something really special about uplifting hometown talent. You know how we know the names of all players on our baseball team? We can rattle them off, and we know the guys on our hockey teams. We don't know the names of our local artists. They aren't household names, and I just hope and pray that through the design competition that you give some type of special preference to local artists, so that when we're going to visit places and these are people who live in our neighborhoods, we might know them, so they become our superstars as well.
Absolutely. So the competition will include local or not local, competitors, I should say.
Yes.
But they are doing a conceptual design, meaning when we look at the built environment, here's a space where we could have maybe a plaza, and they're kind of deciding the conceptual idea of where things might be able to go. But then all the implementation, we would be very focused.
We're very focused.
Not only from who's building and constructing this, but also then community partnerships, local artists, absolutely.
Right,
And
so
a
you
lot
promised to call me, right?
Yeah, I will. And a lot of what we've talked about, especially in our engagement, is we want this to be a very unique St. Louis experience. Kind of what I mentioned right at the beginning is I don't want this to feel,
This is not Memphis.
this is not anywhere else.
Right.
So when if you spent the day on the Shoto Greenway, no one wants that to just feel like, oh, it was a trail, like how other cities have trails. I have a sense of St. Louis. I understand their local art scene, their music, their history. I have a sense of what St. Louis has to offer when I leave that space. So that's a huge priority. Yeah.
Awesome. And we'll have the link to the GRG website where people can find out more or take the survey. And in terms of the plan and the competition, do you have sort of sense of timeline as to the actual design and then implementation and so on and so forth?
A lot of that is still to be determined, but as you know, we don't know what this will look like yet. We're wanting to hear back from community a lot more before we decide anything. But in terms of the general competition, the 4 design teams will be chosen. They will work in the spring. April will be the open comment period where we want to hear from the community about those 4 designs. And then from there, we'll refine, work with partners to see what's feasible, and then it will be a matter of sort of breaking it into chunks, right? So this part might be, built in the next year or so, and then the other parts will need to be designed and engineered. Sometimes there might need to be land acquisition or donation of an easement or whatever it is to be able to get that to happen. So I don't have a specific timeline, but the first piece of it is under construction already. The very first block is in construction in conjunction with the Metrolink station at Cortex. So there's that very first part of it. Other than that, it's very open in terms of the competition and the design, but we know that there's one little anchor there.
Okay.
There's a good way to save costs by conjoining 2 construction projects.
Awesome. That is very exciting, and I'm sure everybody will be looking forward to it. One of the most recent projects that sort of connects arts and green spaces is the Keegan Plaza that just opened. If you were working on it, if you were involved in any part of that planning, can you share how it was and how it plays the role in downtown as a community?
Sure, I can start it off.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of things that come to mind, specifically to what you were saying earlier in terms of placemaking being, not just necessarily a typical statue. There is the runner statue that's back. It's well lit and in its fountain. So we certainly wanted to keep that because the community is really excited about it. But some of the other unique features, we were talking earlier about splash pad. And so people of all ages are just energized by moving water. Right? It's just a fact. We've all agreed.
It is great. I mean, like whenever you walk by, I have seen like a lot of people hanging out, families, people of all ages,
Water
and
features
having
just
really a
makes
good
people-
time.
Yeah,
and
it's
so it is a
interactive.
gem.
Yeah.
It is a treasure.
Yeah.
And that's a great amenity. One of the other things that I think not everybody realizes is on top of the Metropolitan Square building is lights that come on at night to give the moonlighting effect, meaning the effect of a full moon. So not only is that obviously a safety feature, but it's just beautiful. It's beautiful to walk through at night. You feel like this is a really cool space. You can see the arch right from there. The arch is all the different colors that the arch can be, as you guys all know, from varying like times of day and seasons, are also reflected in the pavers that are in the plaza there. There's variations, shades of gray, and there's just some really neat design elements that I think make it feel like a cool place to be, and you just want to be there, and you feel proud of your city for having this as your sort of town hall and gathering space. It's an important space for the community. It's a space for public demonstrations and protests or marches. It's an important gathering space. It's a sort of a neutral ground for events, farmers markets, movie nights, things like that. There's all kinds of opportunities there for it to be really a common ground. It is part of a neighborhood.
It is
here,
a
but
town
it's also
square in a
sort
lot of
our-
ways.
Our front porch, if you will. And so I think that's just there's some neat design elements that make it feel like that special place that is not just any other park, but it's our park at the foot of the arch there in the old courthouse.
I think that's something that the arts environment, they do really well, is bring disparate people together. And if there were ever a time, I think, in St. Louis's history when we need to come together to bump up against each other in a good way, right? In a happy way, to meet each other, to know that St. Louis is represented by all these different people coming together in one place, getting along, having a good time, and going back with a great memory.
Yes.
Right.
And that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
If I can add to that,
Yeah.
that's exactly what we saw when we opened the new riverfront. I don't know if you guys were there, but June 2nd of 2016 was the opening of the riverfront, and we had a 2016 foot long community picnic table, and we had 3,000
wow.
people
I
come
love that.
to eat dinner together, and
Oh
it was
my
so fun,
gosh.
and it was a really great way to reintroduce people to the riverfront, but it was also, I feel like people were just hungry for a place to gather and be together, and it was a great
Yes.
turnout, literally all walks of life from all over the region, and it is sort of a wonderful gathering space that I think it really resonated with people, right? The concept and the event
It's all
and
about
the idea.
rebranding,
Yeah.
that area is all of ours.
Yes,
It's-
exactly,
right.
exactly.
I might live in the Loop or in Clayton, but
That's my
this-
riverfront.
That's
Yeah.
my riverfront.
Yeah.
I'm going down there because I own this. Yeah.
Right, and I mean, and that's one of the things we are always saying is, you know, this riverfront is for the whole region.
Right.
Downtown is
Is-
not just a neighborhood in by itself. It is downtown
It's
for the
St.
whole
Louis's
region.
neighborhood. Right.
It is the place where everybody connects, where
Yeah.
everybody gathers for all walks of life.
Right.
And you know, one of the things that I find very interesting, to your point about, you know, making sure that people are connecting with each other. If you look back in the last 50 years or 70 years, and when people started relying on cars a lot more, everything started becoming insular.
Yes.
You get into your car and you go to exactly where you want to go, and then you're back. And suddenly that built environment, that public space, is just not on your radar.
It's a blur.
Right, it is a blur, right?
Right.
So as we are looking at and talking about all the different things that we're working on, whether it's green spaces and parks, or arts, not as a sculpture to be seated on
Right,
the side,
right, right.
but as something you're interacting with.
It makes you slow down.
Exactly.
Yes,
And
and
it sort
see,
of
yeah.
adds
Yeah.
value to your experience. It enhances your experience. Once you are out of your building and going to wherever you're going, that intermediate time is not you sitting in the car and just listening to music or cursing the traffic.
Right.
You're actually feeling good about seeing things. And I know
Yeah.
we're not there yet. Like, there are a lot of things as far as downtown St. Louis. I mean, we have made good amount of progress, but there's a lot to be done. But that trend, people valuing the experience, is a lot more positive and
Just need to
and
do more of
hopeful.
what works.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
what would be your comment or your thought in terms of, you know, how downtown is now, the people, you know, the idea that sustainability, when people are able to walk to places, the green spaces contribute to that, art pieces sort of entice and induce people to be out and about a little. That sort of changes how people perceive their
You
built
know what
environment.
it's about? It's the stories, which is, I'm so excited about my STL. It's being able to tell the stories, because people won't believe you if you say, God, I went downtown, I had a great time. And they think that was your great time, you know, so what? But if we can make it more real for people by telling humanistic stories about what happened, you know, who was there, what did you do, what did you take away, and then people start getting jealous, because I wish I had been there. So we've got to get, it's like a movement, right?
Right,
It's
right.
a movement back downtown.
Absolutely. And I would reiterate that point to everybody. You know, that is our platform that we launched today, and it will be a continuous one. MySTL, it's a platform to share stories of people in downtown, stories of businesses in downtown. So there'll be more to come every day. It will all be on our new website that was launched earlier today, called mystlcity.com, that will hold all the stories, the videos of the conversations, including this conversation and the ones earlier today, blog posts by all the different people about their experiences with downtown, and highlighting some of the great things that are here. So I would encourage everybody to sort of bookmark that webpage, mystlcity.com. Visit regularly. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And with that, I know we have a few minutes, so I wanted to give an opportunity to the audience if there were any questions. I know we have maybe one or two questions. Anyone?
I have a question.
Yes.
I feel like so many of these projects, whether it's things that the Regional Arts Commission has been working on, whether it's things that City Orange River Arch Park has been working on, so many of them have been happening for a really long time. So maybe as a closing, what would your kind of last point from each of your organizations doing incredible things? What would your last kind of point? Kind of stay tuned. This is almost here.
Well, I'll start. I mean, obviously, everything is about the plan. And I know that St. Louis has so many plans that have been gathering dust, and everybody, oh my God, here comes another plan. But really, this is a good plan.
I believe
So, the first quarter of 2018, we will be finished with the plan. Stay tuned, because this is our blueprint for how the arts will integrate into our community, how the arts will connect with everything from health to economic development to vibrancy to safety, all the ways that the arts can make St. Louis a better place to live. So that's my parting shot, that get involved, make your voice heard, get your input in. Go to our website. Go to #MySTL. We'll have a link, and please share all of your information with us.
And I'll just add, I exactly what you brought up about folks being a little more insular. I think that creating these common spaces and green spaces and greenways where you're using perhaps an outdoor space to travel or move around, it forces people to interact in a different way, in the best way. Again, bumping up against each other.
Right.
I always use the example of like, who here, every single time you see a car on the side of the road stops and checks if they're okay.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that does that every single time.
Right.
But if you walk by somebody who's sitting bleeding on the side of a trail,
You will stop.
and you're a pretty big jerk if you're just like, yeah, bye, okay, and it's just a different sense of place. It's some academics call it a third place where you've got your home or your work or school, and these are those third places where we really have a chance to interact and not only have a great experience and a memory, but bump into somebody that you might not otherwise have interacted with. So I just think that's a really exciting opportunity for any of these projects.
Okay, perfect. Well, I think we're out of time now officially. I want to thank the panelists. Thank you so much for the time. Great conversation.
Thank you.
We rocked it.
Thank you. Thank
Sure.
you.
And thank you for the audience for coming here. And also special thanks to Purano Pasta for hosting us here,
Yeah.
for providing the great food. Once again, if you haven't been here before, do check them out. This great food and great location. And last thing, check out the website, mystlcity.com. A lot of great stories, a lot of great content. Bookmark it. There is more that's going to be added there every day. Share the stories on Facebook and Twitter, and all of that is there. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a good day.